we do a lot of sexual assault cases where we call them the drunk sex cases, where let's say you have two service members, they go out to the bar, they're drinking, they're both intoxicated, they go back to the barracks, hook up, have sex, and the following day, someone has like, oh my God, I can't believe we did that. And next thing you know, it's a sexual assault allegation. And that may go to trial. Those go to trial all the time. A jury would look at that, and maybe a jury comes to the conclusion that both service members were intoxicated, they drank together, they were flirting together, they went back to one of the service members' rooms, and they had sex, but maybe the alleged victim was legally too drunk to consent. Now, that's a whole separate issue. I think individuals have drunk sex all of the time across colleges and universities and bars across the world, and it's not criminal, but in the military, it's a fairly low standard. So maybe the jury follows these instructions and they find a conviction and they convict the service member of a substantial incapacitation type of a case. Well, they'll look at all of that and say, well, there's a lot of mitigating factors here that are in play. And maybe we'll go panel sentencing, and the panel will give a extremely light sentence. Maybe they'll give him a reprimand. Maybe they'll give him no confinement time because it's so mitigating because both parties really consented, but maybe there's a legal issue of lack of ability to consent. Those days are gone. Now, if that happens, depending on what you're convicted of, whether it's sexual assault or rape, that's going to be a mandatory minimum of 36 months or 10 years. Depending on what the charge and the conviction is, for example, if it is a category 3 offense, which is a lower level sexual assault, the mandatory minimum sentence is now 30 months and the maximum is 120 months. So in a case where I just described, maybe it's a sexual assault conviction, which is now a category 3 offense, you're going to do a mandatory 30 months in prison, and that's the bare minimum. And the likelihood is going to be significantly higher. So if the minimum is 30 months and the maximum is 120 months, which is 10 years, you're probably doing 6 to 7 years on an offense where a year ago you might be doing 6 months. Now, if you're convicted of rape, which is a category 4 offense, now remember, and if you want more information on these offense categories, there's a lot of information on our website. We've posted brand new content with all of the offense categories, how many months of confinement or years, and how it applies to a specific charge. But if you got convicted of a rape offense, a category 4 offense, you've got a 10-year minimum now with a 20-year maximum. So that same crime, which a year ago you might have gotten 6 months for, 12 months for, or 18 months for, you are now going to have a mandatory minimum of 10 years. And the judge is going to have little to no discretion on that. So that would be the minimum would be 10 years on a category 4 or a rape offense, which is the majority of the cases that we deal with, and a maximum of 20 years. So think about that in terms of how that's going to play out for a service member. You can now get charged with one of these, garbage, false accusation, sexual assault offenses. If it goes to trial and you lose, you're doing 10 years. That's just the way it is. And that's for one offense. So let's say there's multiple offenses, multiple specifications. Well, those can be done concurrently or consecutively. So let's say you have 2 10-year offenses. Now you're looking at potentially 20 years in confinement, where a year ago or 6 months ago, it was wide open. If you're under investigation for or have been accused of a crime that occurred in 2024 or after, you are facing harsh punishments under the mandatory sentencing guidelines. Please reach out to us so we can explain these guidelines to you and how to actually win your case and not end up in prison. You can reach us at 813-669-3500 or book a consultation with me on our website at www.bileckilawgroup.com.